Welcome back to Andersen Acres. I know it's been a little while since we made a recipe video. Mostly that's because we've been moving. We're finally in our new location and we're ready to keep baking. So today we are going to make easy English muffins. These are not the traditional type of English muffins, which are actually a batter, a yeast rising batter. We're not doing that today. We don't really have the time. I don't have the time. So instead I'm going to show you an easy version of English muffins. This is quick. This is easy to do, and it approximates a real English muffin. It's really close. So let's get started. The first thing you're going to want, we're going to use the bread maker because I don't have time today. So we're going to use the bread maker. You can do this by hand, of course. You can do any bread recipe by hand. You do not need a bread maker. You don't need a mixer. But you absolutely can use your mixer or your bread maker instead of doing it by hand. However you want to make your bread, that's up to you. So today, we are going to make our easy English muffins by starting with 1 cup of water into our bread maker. Again, you don't have to use a bread maker. We are going to do 1 to 2 tablespoons, I'm doing 2 tablespoons of butter or margarine. I prefer butter. Margarine will work just fine in this recipe. Then we are going to add a teaspoon of salt. I'm using Himalayan salt, but you can use any salt you like. A tablespoon of sugar. You do need sugar, so don't try to skip that. We are going to add 1 heaping teaspoon of baking powder. This is important for how our English muffins will rise when they're on the skillet. So you do need the baking powder. 1 heaping teaspoon. We are going to do 1 egg, and I just have to crack it. Yay! 1 egg. Pop that in there. Then we are going to do 3 cups of flour, and as always, I'm probably going to spill. Just a little bit, not bad. And then we're going to do 1 heaping teaspoon of yeast. I'm using bread machine yeast because I am using a bread machine. Now, if you are doing it by hand, you can do traditional yeast. You can also use instant yeast, or quick rise yeast, which is much faster and doesn't require dissolving. Use whichever yeast you have. If you are using traditional yeast, make sure you let it dissolve in the water and sugar first. Remember, your water should not be ice cold, but it doesn't need to be that warm. Room temp is fine. So we are going to pop our bread maker in our bread pan in the bread maker, and we will come back in about 1.5 hours, which is how long my dough cycle takes in my particular bread maker. You can use your bread maker, like I said, and however long your dough cycle takes is how long it takes. If yours takes 2 hours, it'll be a 2-hour wait. For us, it'll be about 1.5 hours. All right, so our dough is ready now. It looks excellent. It should be slightly sticky, not goopy, but definitely a little sticky. So we're going to have a little bit of flour standing by just in case it's too sticky. And in the meantime, while we kind of set this aside for a second, have your flour. You also want to get a cutting board or a cookie sheet or really anything. It doesn't matter. It's just something, because you're going to get some cornmeal, just some yellow cornmeal, and you're just going to put some cornmeal on a cookie sheet or a cutting board. Doesn't matter. Just somewhere to put your English muffins. So there we go. Stick that aside. There we go. Now we're going to grab our dough. Okay, here's our dough. Nice dough. We love our dough. Kind of press it with your hands at first. Get your rolling pin and just start rolling it out. It doesn't have to be a particular shape. You want it to be about 1/2 inch or 3/8 of an inch thick. No less than that. You don't want tiny little shrimpy English muffins. Okay, there we go. And we're just going to turn it over 1 time. Remember to squeeze all the air out first. Smooth that back out. Remember to squeeze all the air out of your dough first. Now this is the stickier side, so here's where I'm going to use a little bit of flour. Not a lot, just a little, because you have your cornmeal sitting by for a reason. This is just so it doesn't stick too much to my rolling pin. Give that a nice little roll. It's okay if your dough retracts a little bit. It's actually not that big a deal. These are just English muffins. Okay, that's roughly what we want. Give it a pat with your hands to help it stay Remember to pop any bubbles you see. That's a bubble. Give that a pop. Don't like bubbles. Then we're going to take a round cookie cutter. It can be really any kind of round cookie cutter. This one is, well, depends on how big you want your English muffins. This one's about 3.5 inches across. You can use any size you like. If you want smaller English muffins, you can certainly do that. So what we're going to do, press down, twist. And just do that a whole bunch of times. Okay, we're just making nice, neat little circles. This is really easy to do. So we just do that. And yep, that fits. Okay, then we're going to get rid of this edging. We're going to re-roll this edging. So just squish that together like so. Sit this off to the side. Okay, you want to let this remaining dough relax for about 5 minutes before you work with it again. In the meantime, set that aside. In the meantime, you're going to get your cookie sheet or your cutting board with cornmeal. You're going to pick up your biscuits, your English muffins, and you're just going to have them on your stickiest side on the cornmeal. Okay, just your stickiest side. Just so they have a little bit of cornmeal on the bottom. Then we're going to set these aside for 15 minutes or so to rise. They don't need much rising, but they do need a little. So we're going to set these aside. So set those guys aside, cover them up with a dish towel. This guy we're going to let rest for a few minutes before we re-roll him, but we will re-roll him and then we will place them, cut them, place them on that sheet as well. But this needs to relax because bread dough is one of those things where if you don't let it relax enough, it'll just keep contracting on itself and it's really annoying. So let this sit for 5 minutes untouched, then you can roll this and add these cut guys to that pan. In the meantime, we are just going to wait about 15 minutes for those to rise. I'll work on this in between. I'm not going to have you watch me cut every single English muffin because that would be annoying and a little boring. So we'll come back in 15 minutes and we'll start cooking our English muffins. All right, we are back and we're preheating our skillet. Forgive the sound of the bread maker in the background. I'm making something else at the moment. I'm making a lot of things right now. We've just moved in and we need a lot of food. So, forgive me for that. However, also forgive that light. It's a motion light and it's annoying. We're just going to leave it. So anyway, we're preheating our skillet because we are going to cook these in a skillet. Now you want this at medium-low, more towards the low than the medium. You don't want this too hot. If it's too hot, your biscuits, your English muffins are going to burn. Okay, so you want your skillet preheated. You want to add a little bit of fat. You can use a butter, you can use a margarine, whatever you want you can use. Butter may burn if your heat's too high. This is one of those cases where I actually might recommend margarine unless you've done this before and you know that your butter is not going to burn. Okay, so if you're not comfortable using butter, you can absolutely use margarine just to make sure it doesn't burn. So spread that around. You just want just a little bit of greasing of the pan. You don't need a ton. Okay? Now we're going to add our English muffins. And we're going to add them cornmeal side down. So they look like this. Okay, they look like that. And they have cornmeal on the bottom. Cornmeal side down to start. So just move them around the pan. Add as many as will fit, but you want to leave at least half an inch, preferably an inch between each muffin. Okay, so you just want to place them around your pan, like so. And I'm going to do 6 if I just kind of rearrange a little bit and get a little squishier. I can do 6 at a time because I've got 12. We'll move them like this and do this guy in the middle. There we go. So kind of space them evenly. It's okay to move them around after you've put them in the pan. They won't stick because you have the cornmeal on the bottom. And I am using a non-stick pan. Now these take a while to cook. What we're going to do is we're going to take the lid of our skillet. There goes the light again. And we're going to put the lid on. We are going to leave this for at least 10 minutes, probably 20, but you'll come back and check at 10. So we're just going to leave this like this for at least 10 minutes. In fact, I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes. There we go. Timer is set for 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, I am going to come back. Forgot to hit the start button. But I'm going to come back and I am going to take a look and we're going to see how these are doing, and we may have to leave them for another 10 minutes. You want the lid on because it keeps the heat on and helps the baking. If you don't have your lid on, your muffins may not be cooked all the way through. So yes, put the lid on. So we're just going to walk away for 10 minutes and we will come back and check on them. I am not going to have you watch that. Even though I could time lapse it, I know I'm not going to. We'll just come back in 10 minutes. All right, so my 10-minute timer just went off. So we're just going to remove this. Place that off to the side. Then we're going to come in here. We're going to check and see if they're browned enough. And they actually are. So I'm just going to flip it over and then I'll pick it up and show you. So you want it to kind of look like that. Okay? So you're just going to flip them all over because you don't want to burn them. There we go. And you're going to set another 10-minute timer. Okay, again, cover your pan. There we go. Okay, so we're going to cover our pan once more. Cover that up. Now again, you're still on medium to low heat, more toward low. You do not want too much heat. So you're going to trap the heat in with the lid so that they cook, but otherwise you're just going to leave them like this. So again, I'm going to set a 10-minute timer. There we go. 10-minute timer. We're going to come back and see how they look. All right, so it has been another 10 minutes. Let's take our lid off. I'm going to turn our temperature down even more because you don't want these too hot. And they're looking pretty good. So they should not be black because that means they're burned, but you can have them as dark or as pale as you like. Just adjust your heat accordingly. So these are pretty good and they are cooked. If you're concerned that they're not cooked, what you can do is throw them in the oven at 350 for 10 minutes, but these ones are definitely cooked. They spring back when squeezed. You don't squeeze hard or you'll squish them, but just go doot doot. And you see how it's springing back? That means it's cooked. I'm just going to transfer them to my cooling rack, and then I'm going to cook the other 6, and then we will come back and we will take a look at the finished product, and I'll cut one open and show you the inside. All right, so we are back over here. All of our English muffins have been cooked. We've got 6 on the top, 6 on the middle rack here. Oops, dropping my knife. So these 6 are really hot because they just came off. So we're going to slice one of these ones. Just going to use our serrated knife, cut through the center without cutting myself. That's excellent. And they should look about like that on the inside. Okay, so you should have these bubbles. That's from the baking powder. That's why we add the baking powder. Okay, so they are nice, fluffy, and delicious. They are excellent with butter, with jam, with cream. I like clotted cream and jam on mine. Of course, you can put whatever you like on yours. These are a lot of fun, really easy to make, and while they're not true English muffins, they are a rough approximation. So if you don't have a couple of days to make real English muffins, these will do in a pinch. And they're a lot of fun, and they're quite tasty. That's about it for us here at Andersen Acres today. We'll see you tomorrow.